India is one of the reasons for USA's defeat in Afghanistan, says SIGAR. What is SIGAR, you ask? Well, it's Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. It quoted a former army Afghan general, Hibatullah Alizai, as saying, Noor and Dostum and some went to India and got money from India to create a resistance force in North to fight Taliban. Well, from the look of it, both US and the so-called resistant force that India was funding were fighting a common enemy called Taliban. Well, according to Alizai, all that money should have gone to Ghani-led Afghan government. But wait a minute. The same report by SIGAR also says that close to 80% of Afghanistan's National Defense Security Forces were ghost soldiers. They were just there to ensure their salary share goes to their high-ranking officials, possibly Hibatullah Alizai. Besides, India, in its bid to support ANDSF, provide military training scholarships to ANDSF personnel. When the government fell, more than 700 ANDSF personnel still being trained in India were allowed to stay on. Surely India cares about ANDSF. But did India actually fund a resistance force? That's the question. Well, to an extent, yes. India, along with Russia and Iran, did support Northern Alliance, a resistance force against the Taliban, led by charismatic Ahmad Shah Massoud, operating from Panjshir Valley. Here is the rationale behind the support. India was doing all this to make sure Taliban does not take over Afghanistan completely, because their affiliation to Pakistan's ISI, a security agency, and Pakistani military is out in the open. Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan meant, or so India thought, that Afghanistan's soil will be used to destabilize India's internal security. These assumptions came true when Taliban hijacked a plane from New Delhi to Kathmandu. During this time, cross-border trained militancy also grew to a heightened proportions in Kashmir. India supported Northern Alliance just to ensure that Taliban stays at bay. Now let's take a brief overview of what has India done for Afghanistan. But before that, look at this statement from former President Donald Trump. It reads, PM Modi is constantly telling me he built a library in Afghanistan. That's like 5 hours of what we spent in Afghanistan. I don't know who's even using it. Well, here's a list of contributions. India's policy towards Afghanistan has always been about winning hearts and minds. India's assistance was largely directed towards education, health, and infrastructure-related activities. India has contributed upwards of $3 billion on various projects, emerging as the fifth largest bilateral donor to Afghanistan. India built the Parliament of Kabul worth $90 million, restoration of Store Palace in the same city, rebuilding of the Habibia High School also in the capital and providing it with grants in aid, reconstruction of the Salma Dam, now known as the Afghan-India Friendship Dam, the establishment of electricity transmission line from Pule Khumri to Kabul, reconstruction of the Indira Gandhi Institute for Child Health and Indira Gandhi Children's Hospital in Kabul, financing the establishment of Afghan National Agricultural Science and Technology University in Kandahar, constructing the Chimtala Power Substation in Kabul, building the cricket stadium in Kandahar, building a cold storage warehouse in the same city, upgrading telephone exchanges in various provinces, upgrading the national television network across Afghanistan, reportedly rehabilitating 3 large water reservoirs. Afghanistan, as a landlocked country, was dependent on Pakistan as Karachi was the only port it could access. India undertook the development of Chabahar port in Iran and also built a 200-kilometer highway in Afghanistan to help connect it to the Iranian border town of Zahedan. India also spearheaded Afghanistan's membership into SARC. Avoiding any sort of military engagement, India adopted the soft power approach towards Afghanistan by means of focusing on civilian issues rather than military matters. Just after the inception of Afghan government under Hamid Karzai, the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee immediately announced $100 million in reconstruction aid to Afghanistan. Over 1,000 Afghan students receive scholarships every year for higher education in India, and nearly an equal number come for short-term professional courses. The United Nations Development Programme chose India for training Afghani diplomats. More than 60,000 Afghanis returned to their homeland to rebuild it after completing their education in India. All along the last 2 decades, New Delhi has put its proverbial eggs in just one basket, and that basket belonged to the Afghan state and the welfare of its people. All this despite US and NATO sensitivities about not upsetting Pakistan, on whom they depended for logistics, communication, and supply of essentials. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and please do not forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you very much.